Hi everyone. For this assignment, you're going to be sketching a foundation detail. So you're going to need a piece of graph paper. Make sure that it is 1/4 inch per square or 4 squares per inch. If you don't have a piece of graph paper, you can download and print. There are printable graph papers. But if you do that, because the lines that you print are black, I suggest using a piece of tracing paper over that. Okay, but if you've got a piece of graph paper with the blue lines, that's probably better. You're going to need your architectural scale, and you'll need a pencil. Okay. For this video, I'm using pen because it shows up better on the video. Okay, but you're welcome to use pencil. So let's get started. First thing I'm going to do is pick a spot on my page to start my foundation. I'm just going to pick a corner right there. And next I want to determine the width of my foundation. So if I'm going to go, maybe that's the top, and so I'm just drawing guidelines at this point, right? And I've decided that this side is outside and this side is inside. Okay. Now remember that the minimum width or thickness of a foundation is 8 inches. It can of course go wider than that for larger houses, but we're just going to go start with the 8 inches. So the first thing we need to do is determine a scale. And I'm going to use 1 inch equals a foot because it's fairly easy to understand. So let's measure 8 inches over. Okay, and that will be the thickness of our foundation wall. So our foundation is going to be up like this. Okay, but so this is the top of our concrete here. But I'm going to be drawing a vented or ventilated crawl space condition. And so at the very top of the foundation wall is going to be your, we'll actually slice through the ventilation grate. And that thing is 8 inches tall. Right here. And it's going to look like that. So we have a little ventilation grate. And then this is going to be the top of where we actually cut through our concrete. Right here. So one of the guiding measurements that you need to know about is that the ground, or we call it the grade, has to be at least 6 inches below any opening or any exposed wood. So in this case, our opening is right here, at this height. Okay, so we're going to go down 6 inches from that. And this will be the line where our earth starts. Okay, this is going to be our existing grade right there. But we want to slope away from our house. So the earth is going to go something like this. Okay. Next we need to know, remember that the bottom of our foundation has to be at least 12 inches below grade. So let's measure that. All right. So our foundation could be just like this. Okay. But it turns out that that measurement right there is not going to be our determining factor. We're actually going to have to go a little deeper, and I'll show you why. So we started here and then we've been moving downwards. So let's try going up. What sits on top of our foundation? It is a 2x8 pressure treated sill plate. So that's going to look like this. Okay. The X in this rectangle shows it's a graphic indicator that we are slicing through a structural piece of wood. Okay, so that's really common. It looks like any structural piece of wood is going to have that X through it. If it's not a structural piece of wood, if it's a finish wood, like a trim piece, a beautiful piece of wood that you're expected to see, you're going to draw as if you were cutting through the wood. Okay. And if it's like a blocking or a non-continuous piece of wood or a nailer, you're going to just do one diagonal instead of two. Okay, so in this case, we've got a 2x8, excuse me, is it 2x8? Yes, 2x8 pressure treated sill plate. Okay, remember what size that is? It's actually 1.5 by 7.25. Okay, so you can measure that out when you draw it. Now what goes on top of that is going to be our floor joists. We haven't talked about floors yet, right? But we know that the bottom of the joist is going to sit on this pressure treated sill plate. So let's draw a little guideline right there. Okay, that's the bottom of our joist right there. So here's an important part of our crawl space design. We need at least 24 inches clear below this joist. So let's measure that. Okay. So here's our measurement for 24 inches clear below the joist. And you can see that we're actually going to need to move our footing down slightly so that we can make that clearance. Okay, now let's talk about the width, or like I like to say, the shoulders of that foundation. And they're going to be 8 inches. So they're going to they're going to be 4 inches. They're going to be half of the width of the stem of your foundation. So let's measure 4 inches. Ooh, looks like I was really right on there with my eyeball. And then this is going to be 8 inches thick right there. 4 inches in this direction. Okay. So our stem is going to be like this. Okay, and so that's the outline of our footing. I'm going to take a thicker pen and see if I can get a nice thick line weight to demonstrate to you. This is where the concrete is. Okay. Now, by the way, this piece right in here is actually concrete also. We're just looking, it's concrete beyond. Okay, so we're not cutting through it, but it is concrete beyond. And one last piece I want to put on there is I had forgotten our anchor bolt. So let's take a look. That needs to be centered in our 2x8 pressure treated sill plate. And so it kind of looks like a little knob and a little washer. Okay, and then it's going to be dashed beyond. Okay, because that anchor bolt is going to be in the concrete that's kind of beyond. All right, but we're taking a look at it. Okay, let's think about the drainage systems outside of our foundation. Remember, this is kind of inside the house and this is outside the house. And one of the first things you want to do is place a perforated drainage pipe kind of sitting right at the bottom. So if this is the bottom of our foundation, we want to make a 4-inch diameter perforated pipe sit right there. So what is that 4-inch diameter? Looks about like that. That's going to be a dashed circle. Okay. And then starting at this top point, and kind of coming out in this pattern here, so wider at the top, is a dashed line. That's going to be some filter fabric filled, by the way, with gravel. All right, so the water percolates in and it's able to get into that perforated pipe and then run out to the storm sewer. And the last piece of this is a drainage mat. We're going to, let's see, let me go for the thick pen again. We're going to have a drainage mat and it's going to be up against the edge of the concrete. I'm going to show it with a kind of a different dashed line. So here we go. And it will turn and wrap over the shoulder of the foundation and into the gravel. Okay, and that's called a drainage mat. On this side, we're going to have our earth cleared until this shoulder level right here. And then on top of that, we will lay a vapor barrier. And now some people tip it up and run the vapor barrier like this. Okay, like kind of lap it up the side. And some people just flat out lay it on the ground. Okay. And even though that vapor barrier is a very thin piece of sheet plastic and it's laying on the ground, do you see how I pulled it off of the ground? That's visually, so on the detail, you can tell the difference between these two items. Okay, and we're going to see that several times as we work through these details. The last thing I'm going to do on this drawing is put in some hatch patterns for my materials. So I'll switch to a thin pen weight. And let's see, let's do the concrete first. Concrete is going to have a pattern of little triangles and little circles. This is a standard pattern for concrete. It looks like this. Can you see way down in this corner? Maybe a little higher. Here we go. Looks like little triangles and circles. Okay, so let's fill that. The other pattern that we have down here in the foundation level is the earth. So right now we're cutting through the earth. I got the thick pen. The earth should always be the thickest line on your drawing. So let's make it extra thick here. Okay. And right here, this line right here, we're cutting through the earth. And even thicker. There we go. And the hatch pattern for the earth looks like this. It goes one direction and then the other direction. And if you're working with AutoCAD or some of the other drafting softwares, there are definitely their standard hatch patterns for this concrete, for this gravel, and for this earth. So you would want to fill in everywhere that it's earth with this pattern. You'll also see this pattern, by the way, it's turned 45 degrees. That's a fairly common way to draw it. All right, the last thing that you're going to do on your sketch is draw your labels, or write or letter your labels. And I'm going to leave that as an exercise up to you. Take a look at the PDF example that I provided and go ahead and put in your dimensions and your notes. Okay. Then keep a hold of this page because if you notice, we stopped right here. Next week we'll continue and draw in our floor system that goes on top of the foundation system. All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye.